you've decided to take the journey of making candles as a hobby into a business. In this video, I will be going over the basics to starting a candle business. More specifically, the things you need to know or consider before officially making it a business. Hello everyone, my name is Wade Thomas. I'm the owner of Black Tie Barn Candle Company. I've been in the industry for some time now. I have helped several candle makers over the years, both not just with the candle making side of things, but also with the business side of things. I've been asked for a while now to start putting out some public content, so here we are. Thanks for joining in. If you are interested in learning more, please subscribe and click the bell notification button so that you can be alerted anytime I upload new videos. Also, if you'd be so kind to click the like button on this video, that really helps me out and encourages me to keep making content if I know that everyone enjoys it. Okay, so at this point, if you're considering taking your candle making from a hobby into a business, I have to make a few assumptions. First, I assume you want to turn this into a business, and you're not just doing it because you feel like you have to. You're feeling some kind of external pressure that just because word of mouth and a little bit of traction, and maybe you're even selling a few here to friends and family, sometimes that causes people to feel like they have to turn it into a business. But a business isn't for everyone. So at this point, if you're watching this video and you're doing your research, that must mean that you actually want to turn it into a business and not just content with keeping it as a hobby. Number two, I have to assume that your products are fully tested and safe and ready to hit the market. That means they're effective, good quality, and safe to burn. You've done your due diligence, you have confidence in your product, and they're ready for the business market. Third, that you're willing to take some risk. All business has risk. Jim Rohn, an entrepreneur, author, and motivational speaker, once said that if you're not willing to risk the usual, then you have to settle for the ordinary. So just understand that and have a comfort feel that with business, there are some risks. Don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid of risk. Just understand that risk is part of business. And number four, you have to have the time and commitment to dedicate to this business. Remember, you're wanting to take this from just a hobby. You want to hit the market. You want to turn some profit. You want to get your products, your candles into the hands of consumers. You have to dedicate yourself to do that. So I'm assuming all of those items are true, and that is why you're here today. So now that all that is out of the way, let's get to the nuts and bolts. There are several things when you're starting a business that you have to take into consideration, necessary steps you have to take in order to transform something into an actual business. We're going to go over those starting with basically a business plan. This means your market research. You've done a little bit of research into the industry, into the market. You kind of have a niche that you're kind of going after. This is a little bit about branding. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but the main point of this is just to make sure you understand the market and the industry. Next is to create goals and have an overall plan for your business. You don't really want to just kind of jump in blind and wing it. You really need to kind of methodically think about how you're going to approach your business. Have a little bit of a plan, have some steps outlined. When I say a business plan, that doesn't mean you have to have some kind of formal, actual business plan that's 100 pages deep that you're going to take to an investor. I don't mean anything like that. I just mean that you need to have a general plan, some objectives and goals in mind when you're creating your business. The reason that is so important is not only does it help you kind of keep on track and keep you focused on what you're actually trying to achieve, but it sets the foundation for the future. Richard Branson once said, every large business starts small. You never know when your business might become the next big business, and you have to be prepared for that, and you have to take the right steps when you're a small business to really lay the foundation for when you can grow. Next, and it's kind of a big one, is what structure you're going to use for your business. Now, we're going to get into these a little bit more detailed coming up, but the main point is you have to decide a structure. And by structure, I mean, like an LLC, a partnership, a corporation, a sole proprietorship. We'll get into those a little bit later, but that should be part of this step. Next, we're going to talk about funding and capital. How much money do you need to get started? That should be the first thing you think about. Can you do it for less than $500? Maybe. Can you do it for less than $1,000? Maybe. The truth is it's hard to tell until you get started. Some people can do this for a little bit less and they can do a little bit quicker than others. And for some people, it can take a while. It really kind of depends on your time and your available funds. As you probably know by now, testing can get very, very expensive. And it's even more expensive when you want to take it to the level of actually turning this into a business, because you're no longer buying little bits and pieces here to try to put together a product. You're going to start buying in larger bulk. But to get to that point, you really have to have a better understanding of how much this is going to cost you. Now, if you've already done a lot of the legwork and you've done a lot of the experimenting and testing, and you already have a set collection of products that are ready to hit the market, you've already saved some of that cost. But don't forget about those costs. Keep all those receipts, keep everything documented, because those can be part of your startup expenses that you can write off at tax time. Again, we're not going to go into the details about that in this video, but just know that funding to start up your business is very, very important. However, It's not just about the funding to get started. How much money do you need to sustain your business for, let's say, 6 months or a year? You want to give yourself a chance. You want to give your business a chance to grow and kind of settle in. If you get started and then run out of funds after month one, you didn't give yourself much of a chance. However, with all that being said, avoid borrowing if you can. With a business like this, you can start off small and kind of grow as you can. Because of that, it's really not ideal type of business situation to go borrow a lot of funds through a loan or even through a personal friend or family loaning you money to help you get started. Use what you have available to you first. And if that isn't quite enough, and you have to reach out to some other resources, credit card with a very low or 0% interest to kind of get the ball rolling. But I would avoid any major funding decisions like taking out a big kind of loan or startup small business loan. Those are generally a bad idea, especially if you're new to business. This is the first business you've ever run. It is true that it takes money to earn money. You have to spend money to earn money in business. That is true, but it's best to be able to fund yourself if at all possible. Okay, now we're going to talk about business structure. We touched on this a little bit before, and we'll dive into each one of these with a little bit more detail coming up next because it really is an incredibly important part of starting up a business. But by business structure, what I mean is you need to decide between an LLC, a sole prop, a partnership, something like that, your actual structure of your business, your entity. But next, you also have to come up with your business name and your branding. What are you trying to go for? What's the market you're really trying to attack here? And then you need to come up with some branding to help surround that. And then when you're creating a business, you really have your main primary business name, right? And then you also have what's called a fictitious name or a DBA, which stands for doing business as. Now, the reason that's important is you have if you decide to go the route of like an LLC, you're going to have your official company name. For example, mine is Black Tie Barn LLC. Now, I also have a fictitious name or DBA of Black Tie Barn Candle Company. And so those are additional names that your business might go by, but you still have your official registered business name. So some things to keep in mind as well. Now, let's talk about specifically when you register your business. First and foremost, let's talk about the difference between a sole proprietorship and an LLC. Those would be the two most common ones you're going to look at for a business like this. So let's start with a sole proprietorship. What is that? Well, essentially a sole proprietorship just means you're doing business as yourself. It is still technically a business type, except for you're really the entity. You're doing business as an individual, as a person, and then you would register that fictitious name, that DBA, to do business as another name. So for example, if I was registered myself as a sole proprietorship, my business name would be Wade Thomas, with the fictitious name of Black Tie Barn. So in other words, I would be Wade Thomas doing business as Black Tie Barn. What are the benefits of going that route? What's the benefits of doing a sole proprietorship? Well, for starters, it's the easiest. It's also the cheapest. It's very quick, no hassle. It used to be the most common way to get started. The drawbacks to this is the liability that you take on. There's not much of a distinction between yourself and the business. And so because of that blending, you're generally at risk for your own personal assets as well. I never really recommend going this route, or at least for very long. Maybe to start that way is okay, but it's not really a route that I recommend most people to take. The reason is because an LLC or limited liability company is not much more complicated to set up. It's also not very expensive, but it's really, really worth it. An LLC stands for limited liability company, and that kind of says it all. It really is a business structure that has a lot of the freedom and ease of a sole proprietorship, but it has some business protections. For example, there is a distinction between your business and you as an individual. In fact, with an LLC, your personal assets are not for liability. If something goes wrong in your business, the only thing at risk is your business assets. That alone makes it worth it. We're not going to go too much in the weeds in here on how to actually go through and create an LLC or the exact cost, but you can generally do it for a few $100. You can do it on your own through services like LegalZoom. Honestly, what I've always done, and I've always recommended everyone else, is just get a small business attorney that can do this for you. They're only going to charge a few $100. It's not much more, if at all, than a service like LegalZoom. But you're also going to get more personal attention on this, and it's going to get structured in the way that's probably best for you and your business. It's just, you don't have to worry about handling anything yourself and guessing on what you should be doing, what questions you should be answering. Speak with an attorney or a business professional, have them do it for you. Okay, so now let's talk about what you'll need if, depending on which one of these business structures you decide on. Let's say you decide to go with an LLC. Well, at the federal level, there's really only one thing you need, and that is an FEIN, or Federal Employee Identification Number. That is something you'd have to register at the federal level. It's very simple, very quick, not much to it. Again, if you're working with a business professional or a business attorney, they're going to do all of this, help you with all of this. Optionally, at the federal level, you can also trademark your business if you'd like. You would do that with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. This is something, though, you would do after your business is formed. I would say most small businesses don't go this route, but it is there if you'd like to do it. It can be expensive. So what about the state level? Well, this is really where some of the work starts to come in. First, you're going to have to register with your state. This is usually going to be some kind of business agency or a Secretary of State. So what types of things are you going to register with your state? Well, for an LLC, there's two things. There's an operating agreement and your articles of organization. Those are two documents that have to be created when you do an LLC. Again, you don't have to create those, though. They're general documents that are created as part of forming an LLC. You're going to want your DBA or fictitious name. My company's Black Tie Barn LLC, but I also have Black Tie Barn Candle Company and Black Tie Barn Candles. And those are fictitious names, other names that I can use when representing my business. Those can be registered for anywhere between $7 and $12 generally per name in the state. What that does is protect someone else in that state from using your name, but also allows you to legally use that name to do business under your company. Hopefully that makes some sense. Lastly, we need to talk about the local level. So we've handled federal, we've handled state, the last is local. Local, there's really just two things. You need your business license. Now, I should say that the stipulations that you need at a local level will vary by locale. So what might be true for me here in Kansas City could be different for someone over in San Diego or someone in Jacksonville. It's going to vary from coast to coast and pretty much state to state, city to city. It can wildly vary. But generally, the two things you're going to need is a business license, which is your license, the right to do business. And secondly, a seller's permit or a sales tax license. Again, that's going to vary per location, but those are the two things you generally need. Okay, so what about a sole proprietorship? Well, again, most of these are still going to hold true even for a sole proprietorship. You're still going to need an employee identification number. And this, again, is at the federal level, and it's often your social security number, but it is still something that needs to be registered. Now, at the state level, you still need to register your business. You still need to create a DBA or fictitious name. You're still going to have to pay that $7 to $12, again, generally per state to do that. And then finally, at the locale level, you're still going to have to get a business license, and you still have to get your sales tax license or your seller's permit. So as you can see, just real quickly there, the comparison between sole proprietorship and LLC, really the only major difference is at the state level. Instead of just registering a fictitious name or a DBA as a sole proprietor, you're just doing one additional thing by setting up an LLC, which is your articles of organization and your operating agreement. Those are done when you form the LLC. So you can see there's not a whole lot of extra work that has to be done. It's just a little bit more complex. But again, if you hire a professional or a service to do this for you, it's really not a big deal. I would strongly recommend going that route if it's possible. Okay, now for everyone's favorite part, insurance. I know, it's a dirty word, but unfortunately insurance is a necessary part of business. All business has risk, and insurance is there to protect you from those risks. My mindset on insurance and starting a business is if insurance is not something you really want to deal with, and it's not something you want to pay for, you want to avoid that cost and generally, then business might not be for you. Unfortunately, insurance it should be looked at as just a cost of doing business. It's really there to protect you. I know no one really likes insurance and it feels like most of the time it's being wasted, but honestly, the one time you need it, hopefully you don't, it's going to be worth every single penny. Not only can I list off reason after reason of why you really need insurance and why you should have insurance, it's almost impossible to effectively run a business without it. In fact, it's illegal in many cases to be able to do certain things without having an insurance policy when it comes to business. All that being said, I need to offer a disclaimer. I'm not a licensed insurance agent. I'm not an insurance expert. These are general tips and information. Please speak with an insurance professional. So when we're talking about insurance, though, specifically, what types of insurance do you need for a candle making business? Well, for all businesses, you should get a general business insurance, and that just kind of protects your assets, your equipment to protect you and your business. But what you really need in a candle making business is a product liability insurance. So it's really two pieces kind of working together here, and it can be very difficult to find for a candle making business. So really have to do your research, but there are a few options out there. The first, one of the most common, is IBN, or the Indie Business Network. They charge you a fee to become a member. And then as a member, you have access to their insurance policy. You're going to kind of pay a member fee plus the insurance fee. There are other options though too. Another common one is HSGC, which is the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild. And it's very similar to how the IBN network works as well. So first you join as a member and then you get an insurance policy along with it. I believe, and this may have changed, I'll have to look into it, but the HSGC, otherwise commonly referred to as the Soap Guild, in the past, you had to sell soap products and you had to insure those before you could insure your candle products. You couldn't just use them if the only thing you made was candles, but that may have changed recently. Now, another insurance company I see frequently, some candle makers are using for their insurance is Liberty Mutual. It's not real common for your standard insurance companies to cover candle making, but I have seen Liberty Mutual mentioned several times now. I can't verify it myself or confirm that. From what I see, it appears that they might actually cover candles as well. So I would just do your research, do your homework. If you are going to look at one of your own local insurance companies or one that you already work with, make sure you specifically ask them if it covers candle making and have them show you, because most don't. Okay, the next thing you're going to need is a business bank account. It's very, very important to set up a separate bank account, checking account from your personal checking account. So money and personal finances, as most of us know, can already be very kind of daunting to try to balance and manage. You know, it's one of the more difficult aspects of being an adult, right? It becomes increasingly more difficult when you start combining business with your personal finances. So just keep it clean. Create a demarcation between your business and personal finances and treat them separately. There are also massive tax benefits to doing so as well. You can get business deductions and write-offs for all your business expenses. Well, when you start merging those with your personal expenses in a personal checking account, it gets very, very difficult to sort which is which and what each purchase was for. It also makes it much more likely that you could get audited and more difficult for you to pass the audit if your accounts are merged. So just do yourself a favor, open a separate checking account. It also will help you plan and track your expenses for your business, which means better insight into your business and how it's performing. Again, if it's combined with your personal finances, it all kind of gets muddied together and it's really difficult to ascertain how your business is actually doing. If it's tracked separately and you're using some other software, which we'll touch on later, it becomes much more clear how your business is doing financially. It also will help save for additional purchases or for your taxes that are due each quarter or each year. For example, when you're collecting sales tax, it's kept separately in your business account, and you know not to touch that, and you can kind of segregate that off even further in your account. But again, the more you mix all this in with your personal finances, it can be really difficult to manage. Okay, so we've gone over a few of the basic business steps that you need to take this from a hobby further, right? First is to basically just have a business plan, some kind of goals and objectives. And we talked about funding and capital for your business. We also talked about business structure. Do you want to be a sole proprietor starting off and then move to an LLC, or do you want to become an LLC right from the get-go? Then we dove a little bit into detail on how to develop both of those business entities. Then we got that insurance monkey off our back just a little bit. We discussed while having a separate business checking account is very important to have it separate and distinct from your personal account. The last thing we're going to talk about real quick is bookkeeping and accounting. I almost forgot this. I don't want to leave this out. And again, we can have several videos on this topic alone, but just a high level view of this, you really need to have some kind of way to track your records, your inventory, your expenses, your income, basically bookkeeping and accounting in general. Now, you can track this some kind of on a daily and monthly. Starting off with a spreadsheet is completely fine. Once you start to grow, though, I would look into some kind of actual software to help you track and do your bookkeeping for you. There are some free ones out there like Wave Apps, for example, or you can pay just a little bit a month and go with something like QuickBooks Online. There are several things out there that can help you track and do your bookkeeping for you. But I would also highly, highly recommend having an actual professional accountant, CPA, do your taxes at the end of the year, because taxes for a business is very different than taxes for an individual. There are things that they will know to consider that you might not. Also, the challenges for an inventory style business like candle making can be a little daunting early on. And so again, we're not going to go into all those details right now, but my general advice is make sure you're doing your bookkeeping some sort early on. Save everything. Save every receipt, document every transaction, incoming, expenses, everything. This is just advice, just as tips, and I would seek a professional to ask them the questions that you have on your mind. Have them give you the advice you need to start this business. So now that we've kind of covered all these basic steps to take your candle making from a hobby to a business, I just want to leave you with some final words of advice and encouragement. The first is to not spread yourself too thin. Be focused. not frantic. One of the worst mistakes you can make early on is trying to do too much. And I'm speaking from experience here. I am kind of wired that way. I really like to take on a little more than I can handle at one time. Part of it's just interest, part of it's I'm just driven, and sometimes that backfires, right? Don't bite off more than you can chew, okay? Stay focused, not frantic. That's the best advice I can give you early on. If all you have to launch with is 8 cents, then start with 8 cents. If you've got 10 or 12, then start with 10 or 12. Never feel like you don't have enough to start, though. If you're ready to hit the market with what you have and you're confident with that, then just do it. Don't overthink it, which sort of relates to the next tip, and that is to be efficient. Work smart, have a plan, be efficient. It was famously once said that if you work on something that only has the capacity to make a few bucks, it doesn't matter how hard you work. You're only going to make a few bucks. So use your time wisely. What that is telling us is that you really need to invest your time where it matters the most. Don't overcommit and spend too much time on things that just aren't going to amount to much, on things that are not that important. Use your time wisely and be efficient. Focus on the right tasks. Next is to don't fear failure. Growth comes from failure. You need to be willing to test. You need to be willing to experiment. Have fun, be creative, and try new things. Ask customers for their feedback, for their input. Remember, it's their opinions that are actually driving your business. Adaptation is key. Thomas Edison is famous for saying that I have not failed. I've just found 1,000 ways that don't work. Same's for business, the same's for candle making. Don't give up. Keep trying, learn from your mistakes. Lastly, and arguably most importantly, is to just make sure you're committed and to dedicate yourself. If you truly, truly want to turn this into a business, you've got to commit. You can't just approach this haphazardly and wing it. You really got to have a plan, follow all the things we talked about in this video, and dedicate yourself. There's this book with a really great title. The dream is free, but the hustle is sold separately. And I just love that quote. It just kind of goes to show you that it takes something to start a business, right? You can dream all you want and it doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't cost you much money, any money, and it only costs you a little bit of time. It's the hustle, it's the business, it's the commitment and dedication that really has a cost to it. And it's usually both time and money. Be prepared to do that if you really want to take this to the next level. It is truly rewarding. In my opinion, it's worth every penny and it's worth every minute. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it proves helpful to you on your journey to start a new business. I mean, if you've reached this point, you've already come a long way. Just got to go a little further. Now, I know this video, even though it was really just a high-level overview of the business basics, there was still a lot of information, a lot of content. Don't let it overwhelm you. Most of these things can be researched and looked up yourself. You can be learned in a relatively quick amount of time. There's also a lot of services and people out there who help you along the way. Just don't let it overwhelm you. The hard part is the candle making, right? And you've already got that. Once you have your business formed and take some time letting it settle in and getting used to running it, the business side of things will become fairly simple and routine. Ask for help along the way, use your resources, you'll be just fine. The satisfaction, the pride, the self-fulfillment, the future that you're building for yourself, it's very, very rewarding. Good luck to all of you. Please leave a comment in the comment section below about how long you've been doing candles as a hobby and what's motivated you to take the next step and turn it into a business. Please remember to like this video and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you all next time. Thank you.